It's a Tuesday morning at a dealership outside Columbus, Ohio, and there's a guy standing at the service entrance holding two key fobs and an owner's manual in a plastic bag. His SUV is 11 months old. It has 19,000 miles on it. It still smells new, and he's handing it back. Not trading it, not selling it, handing it back to the bank, on purpose, because the payment on that thing is $1,140 a month. His insurance went up again, and he sat down one night with a calculator and figured out he'd be better off taking the hit to his credit than making that payment for 6 more years. Now here's the part most people don't understand, and it's the whole reason I'm making this video. You can't return a car. There's no receipt, no 30-day window, no customer service counter. What's actually happening across this country right now, by the hundreds of thousands, is something the industry has much colder names for. Voluntary surrender, repossession, underwater trade-in. Last year, lenders repossessed about 1.73 million vehicles in the United States. That's the most since 2009, the bottom of the financial crisis. Right now, roughly 3 out of every 10 people walking into a dealership to trade in their vehicle owe more on it than it's worth. I've spent my whole life around cars, and I've watched a lot of people get hurt by a lot of bad machinery. But the machine hurting people right now isn't under the hood. It's in the finance office. So stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly how a $50,000 SUV turns into a trap, how to know if you're already standing in one, and how to get out without losing your shirt. And there's one part of this near the end about who actually designed the system and why that should genuinely make you a little angry. Don't skip out before that. Before any of the numbers make sense, you need to understand one thing. Because without it, none of the rest of this holds together. 2 lines on a graph. That's it. That's the entire crisis, right there. The first line is what your vehicle is worth. It starts high and it falls fast. A new SUV loses somewhere around 20% of its value in the first year, and it keeps sliding after that. Steep at first, then flattening out. That's depreciation, and the finance people love to make it sound complicated. Forget the word. It just means the thing you bought is worth less every single morning you wake up. The second line is what you owe. That one falls slowly, painfully slowly, because in the early years of a car loan, most of your payment isn't paying for the car at all. It's paying interest. On a long loan, you can make payments for 2, 3 years and barely dent the actual amount you borrowed. Now picture those 2 lines. The value line dives. The debt line crawls. And for years, sometimes 5 or 6 years on a long loan, the debt line sits above the value line. That gap between them, that's what the industry calls negative equity. Being underwater. Upside down. Forget the jargon. It means this. If you sold your vehicle today for every penny it's worth, you would still owe the bank money. You'd hand over the keys and write a check on top of it. The old-timers understood this in their bones, which is why they used to tell you to never finance a car for longer than you could hold your breath. They'd put a third down, finance 36 months, and own the thing outright before it needed its first set of tires. The math hasn't changed since then. Only the loans have. So how did we get here? How did we end up in 2026 with people lining up to hand back nearly new SUVs? It took 3 things stacking on top of each other, and I want to walk you through each one because odds are at least one of them applies to you or somebody you know. The first thing was the price. The average new vehicle in this country crossed $50,000 at the end of last year. $50,326 to be exact, per Kelley Blue Book. First time in history it's been over 50 grand. And that's the average, mind you. The full-size trucks and the big 3-row SUVs that Americans actually love to buy, those are averaging well north of that. Full-size pickups were transacting around $66,000 at the end of 2025. Back in early 2020, the average new vehicle was under $38,000. So in about 6 years, the price of getting into a new vehicle jumped by more than 30%. Wages did not jump 30%. I'll save you the trouble of checking. The second thing was what happened in 2022, and this is the part that set the trap. You remember it. The chip shortage. Empty lots. Dealers with 6 vehicles on the floor and a waiting list. People were paying sticker over sticker, 5 and 10 grand over sticker, for whatever was available. And here's the thing. Nobody wants to say out loud. Used values were so inflated back then that the market covered for a lot of bad decisions. You could overpay for a truck, drive it 2 years, and trade it in without getting burned, because used prices were sky high too. That's over. Prices have come back down to earth. Depreciation is behaving normally again, and every loan that was written at those inflated 2022 and 2023 prices is now aging into a market where the vehicle is worth what it should be, and the loan is still what it was. The gap opened up like a sinkhole. Edmunds' own analysts have said it plainly. This isn't always people picking bad vehicles. Trucks and SUVs that have historically held value like gold, Tundras, for crying out loud, are showing up underwater. Toyota Tundra owners trading in right now are carrying an average of almost $9,000 in negative equity into their next loan. A Tundra. If a Tundra can't save you, the problem isn't the vehicle, it's the financing. And that's the third thing, the loans themselves. To keep those $50,000 vehicles moving off the lots, the industry didn't lower prices. It stretched the payments. In the second quarter of this year, nearly 1 in 4 people financing a new vehicle signed up for a loan of 84 months or longer. 7 years. That's the highest share ever recorded. More than a third of buyers are past 72 months. The average new car loan is now over 70 months long, and the average interest rate has been running close to 7%. Let me make that real for you, because percentages don't hurt until you turn them into dollars. Take a loan of about $44,000, which is right around the average amount financed on a new vehicle today. At roughly 7% over 84 months, you're paying about $660 a month, and over the life of that loan, you will hand the lender something in the neighborhood of $11,500 in interest alone. $11,500. That's a whole decent used car, paid to the bank, for the privilege of stretching the pain out over 7 years. And that's the average deal. The average monthly payment on a new vehicle hit $770 in the first quarter of this year. Record high. Nearly 1 in 5 new car payments in this country is now over $1,000 a month. $1,000 every month for 7 years. And the vehicles topping that $1,000 payment list aren't Ferraris. They're F-150s, Silverados, Rams. Regular trucks for regular people, financed like vacation homes. Now stack it all up and watch what happens to one ordinary family. They bought a nice mid-size SUV in 2023, paid over sticker because that's what everyone was doing. Put down less than they wanted to because down payments have been shrinking too. The average is around $6,000 now and falling because people just don't have the cash. So they financed maybe $45,000, $48,000 over 75 months. 3 years later, the payment is still north of $700. Insurance has gone up because the total cost of owning a vehicle, payment, fuel, insurance, repairs, has climbed almost 50% since 2019, according to Cox Automotive. Groceries went up, rent went up, and the SUV, it's worth maybe 28, 30 grand. They still owe 37. They are $9,000 underwater, and they never did a single thing that felt reckless at the time. Every step was normal. Everybody around them was doing the same thing. That's who's handing back keys in 2026, not deadbeats. Not people who bought Lamborghinis on a landscaper's salary. Ordinary buyers who signed ordinary paperwork in an extraordinary market. And you might be wondering why the title of this video says SUV and not just car. Fair question. Here's why. The whole American market has spent a decade migrating into bigger, heavier, more loaded vehicles. Cox Automotive's own analysts describe today's prices as reflecting a market that favors large, expensive vehicles. And that's exactly what you see on any lot. 3-row family SUVs, crew cab trucks, everything with a panoramic roof and a heated steering wheel and a 14-speaker stereo. And every one of those features does 2 things. It raises the price you finance, and it does almost nothing for the resale value 5 years later. A base work truck holds its value beautifully because the next buyer wants exactly what it is. A $62,000 loaded family hauler competes on the used market against last year's loaded family hauler and the year before's, and the depreciation on those optioned-up trims is brutal because nobody pays used car money for a stereo. So the vehicles Americans financed hardest are the exact vehicles that fall furthest. That's why the SUV is the face of this. It's not that SUVs are bad machines. Most of them are honestly better built than they've ever been. It's that they were the biggest loans against the softest values, and when the tide went out, they were standing furthest from shore. Let me also show you exactly when the trap closes, because there's a moment on the calendar, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Take that 84-month loan on a $44,000 SUV. 5 years. About a quarter of those underwater trades are dragging more than $10,000 of old debt into the new deal, and close to 1 in 10 is dragging more than $15,000. Read that again. People are rolling $15,000 of debt from a car they no longer own into the loan on a car they just bought. That's not a car loan anymore. That's a snowball, and it's rolling downhill. Meanwhile, the people who can least afford it are falling behind first. 5.6% of all outstanding auto debt in this country was at least 90 days delinquent in the first quarter, up about 12% from a year earlier, per the New York Fed. And in the subprime market, borrowers with rough credit, the 60-day delinquency rate has blown past 6%, which according to Fitch is the worst it's been since they started keeping that record in 1994. 32 years. Worse than the 2008 crisis. Prime borrowers, folks with good credit and room in the budget, they're mostly fine. This pain is landing almost entirely on working people who got squeezed from every direction at once. And here's a number that tells you exactly who's been pushed out. Households earning under $100,000 used to be half of all new car buyers back in 2020. They're down to about 37%. The new car market is quietly becoming a market for the well-off, and everybody else is left holding the loans from when they could still afford to play. So now let's talk about what returning your SUV actually means, because I promised you the truth, and the truth has teeth. When you hand the keys back to the lender, whether they send a tow truck at 2 in the morning or you drive it to the branch yourself and do it with dignity, it is a repossession. A voluntary surrender is gentler on your nerves and saves you the tow fee, but on your credit report, it reads almost exactly the same, and it sits there for 7 years. And here's the part that catches people completely off guard. Giving the vehicle back does not erase the debt. The lender takes your SUV, runs it through an auction, and it sells for wholesale money, usually thousands less than retail and often far less than what you owed. The difference between what you owed and what the auction brought, plus the repo fees, plus the auction fees, that's called a deficiency balance, and in most states they can come after you for every dime of it. Wage garnishment. Collections. So the man in my opening, the guy with the key fobs in the plastic bag, he didn't walk away clean. He walked away without the SUV, with a wrecked credit score, and quite possibly still owing $8,000 or $10,000 on a vehicle he'll never sit in again. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because the phrase, "just give it back," is doing a lot of damage right now. And nobody signing those surrender papers seems to have been told what's on page 2. I'll be straight with you about something else too. You'll see advice online about quick escapes. Sell it privately and pocket the difference. There is no difference. That's what underwater means. Trade it in and roll the negative into the next loan. That's not an escape. That's digging the hole deeper with a bigger shovel, and dealers will happily hand you the shovel because the roll-in becomes part of a brand new loan they profit on. Refinance your way out. Refinancing can trim a payment if rates dropped or your credit improved, but it cannot make $7,000 of negative equity disappear. It just rearranges it. The cheap, painless version of getting out from under a bad car loan does not exist. Anyone selling you one is selling you something. So what actually works? Here's the honest playbook, and it depends on where you're standing. If you're underwater but you can still make the payment, the single best move is usually the most boring one. Keep the vehicle and drive it. Every month the debt line falls and eventually it crosses back under the value line. Depreciation slows down after the early years. Your loan doesn't. Time heals this particular wound as long as you maintain the thing, and a modern SUV that gets its oil changed and its fluids looked after will run 250,000 miles without drama. The vehicle isn't the enemy. The loan is. Outlast the loan. If you can pay extra, even a little, aim it at the principal. On a 7% loan, an extra $100 a month toward principal isn't just paying down debt, it's earning you a guaranteed 7% return, which is better than most people's investments are doing on a given year. Call your lender and make sure extra payments actually apply to principal, because some of them will quietly apply it to future interest unless you tell them otherwise. If the payment itself is what's drowning you, talk to the lender before you miss a payment, not after. This surprises people, but lenders do not want your SUV. They lose money on repossessions every single time. Many of them will do a deferment, a modified schedule, a term adjustment because a slow-paying customer beats an auction loss. The moment you're 60 days behind, your options shrink fast. And if you're only shopping right now, not stuck yet, then hear this part clearly, because it's cheap to fix a mistake you haven't made. 20% down if you can manage it, and never finance longer than 60 months. If the only way you can afford the vehicle is an 84-month loan, you cannot afford the vehicle, and I say that with love. Buy the smaller trim, buy the 2-year-old version, and let somebody else eat the first 20% of depreciation, or keep what you've got another few years. And if you do end up financing with a small down payment, spend the few $100 on gap coverage from your insurer, not the dealer's marked up version, so that if the thing gets totaled while you're underwater, you're not making payments on a vehicle that's sitting in a scrapyard. One safety note while we're here, because I know where some of you are headed next: the repo auctions. There are genuine deals in repossessed vehicles right now. The lots are full of low-mileage 2023 and newer stock. But some of those vehicles skipped a year of maintenance while their owners were choosing between the car payment and the electric bill. Get any auction vehicle inspected before money changes hands. Fluids, brakes, tires. A cheap SUV with a cooked transmission is not a cheap SUV. Now, before we get to the part I promised you, I want to show you two more things because they round out the picture. The first is the other kind of return, the one that actually is a return: the lease. A decent chunk of what looks like people handing back SUVs this year is simply lease ends. And for once, the timing has handed some of those folks a gift. If you leased in 2023, your contract had a buyout price written into it, what the bank guessed the vehicle would be worth at the end. Some of those guesses were made when used values were still inflated, which means some lease buyouts today are priced above what the vehicle is worth on the open market. And in that case, handing it back is exactly right. That's the whole point of a lease. The bank ate the depreciation instead of you. But check the number before you assume. Every so often it cuts the other way. The buyout is below market value, and people hand back thousands of dollars of free equity because they never read the line on the contract. 2 minutes with the contract and a value lookup. That's all it takes to know which side of that you're on. The second thing is the squeeze nobody puts in the ads: insurance. Part of the reason the man in my opening did his math and gave up wasn't just the $1,100 payment. It's that insuring a new SUV has gotten genuinely expensive, and it's not entirely the insurance companies being greedy, though I'm not going to defend them either. It's the vehicles. That bumper on your new SUV has radar in it. The windshield has a camera that needs recalibrating after a replacement, which can turn a $300 glass job into over $1,000. A minor fender bender that would have been a $200 bolt-on panel in 1998 is now a sensor-laden assembly plus calibration time at $100 and change per shop hour. The insurers price all of that in, and it's a big part of why the total cost of keeping a vehicle on the road has climbed nearly 50% since 2019. So when you're running the numbers on any vehicle, run the insurance quote before you sign, not after. I've watched people lose a deal's worth of money to the difference between insuring one trim and another, purely because of what's bolted to the front of it. Now, this is the part that actually matters, and it's the part I told you to stay for. Ask yourself one question: who does the 84-month loan serve? It wasn't invented for you. Think about what that product actually is. It exists to solve exactly one problem. Vehicles became too expensive for ordinary people to buy, and instead of anyone in that chain making vehicles cheaper, they made the payments smaller and the debt longer. The manufacturer keeps the $50,000 sticker. The dealer, and understand that many dealers make more money in the finance office than they make on the metal, gets to close the deal, sell the loan, sell the add-ons, sell the warranty. The lender collects 7% for 7 years, which on the average deal is more than $11,000 of pure interest. And when you come back in 4 years underwater, they don't turn you away. They roll your old debt into a new loan, and the wheel turns again, and everybody in that room gets paid again. Everybody except you. There's no money in you buying a sensible vehicle with a big down payment and a short loan and then driving it for 15 years. There is a tremendous amount of money in you being permanently financed. In the payment, not the price. That's why every ad you've ever seen says $299 a month and never says the total. That's why the finance manager's first question is what payment are you comfortable with, which is a genuinely brilliant question because it moves the entire conversation away from the only numbers that matter: the price, the rate, and the term. Nobody in that building sat in a room and cackled about ruining you. It's quieter than that. It's just that every incentive at every desk points toward a longer loan and a bigger number, and no incentive anywhere in that building points toward telling you to wait 2 years and save up. The system isn't broken. The system is working exactly as designed. It just wasn't designed for you. And here's what we lost along the way, because there was a time this was different. There was a time when the whole point of buying a car, the entire point, was the day you finished paying for it. Your grandfather's generation drove paid-off cars. That was normal. The car got you to work, the payment ended, and the money that used to be the payment went into the house, the kids, the fishing boat. A paid-off machine sitting in your driveway is one of the last honest forms of wealth an ordinary person can have. It asks nothing of you on the first of the month. And somewhere in the last 20 years, we let that idea get taken from us and replaced with the idea that a car payment is just a permanent utility bill, like water or electricity, something you'll simply always have. It isn't. It never was. A machine can be finished. A subscription can't. And an awful lot of very comfortable people are counting on you never noticing the difference. So here's what I want you to do. And I mean this week, not someday. First, find out where you stand. Log into your loan account and get your exact payoff amount. Not the balance, the payoff. Then look up what your vehicle is actually worth. Trade-in value and private party value both. Subtract. Now you know. Underwater or above water, no more guessing. Takes 15 minutes and costs nothing. Second, if you're underwater and the payment is manageable, commit to keeping the vehicle and maintain it like you mean it. Oil, fluids, tires, brakes. You're not stuck with a bad car. You're riding out a bad loan, and every month the math gets better. Third, if you've got any slack in the budget, send extra money at the principal and confirm with the lender that's where it lands. Fourth, if the payment is genuinely sinking you, call the lender now, today, while you're current, and ask about hardship options. And if surrender truly is the last door left, walk through it with your eyes open. Know that the deficiency balance follows you and get every agreement in writing. And fifth, if you're shopping, the rules are short. 20% down, 60 months maximum, and negotiate the price of the vehicle, never the payment. If those 3 rules kill the deal deserved to die. Do that, and here's the picture. A few years out, you're the person whose vehicle is paid off while your neighbor is signing loan number 4. You're the one who hears the finance manager ask what payment you're comfortable with and smiles because you know exactly what that question is for. $770 a month, staying in your pocket every month while a machine you understand and own outright sits in the driveway and starts every morning. That's not a fantasy. That's just arithmetic, plus a little patience, plus refusing to be the product. Tell me in the comments below, are you underwater right now, and how deep? What did you pay in 2022 or 2023, and what's it worth today? And I especially want to hear from anyone who's been through a surrender or a repo, what they told you, what they didn't tell you, and what you wish you'd known going in. Your stories down there teach people more than any chart I can put on a screen, and I read every single one of them. That's not a line. Those comments are half the reason these videos keep getting made. If this one saved you from signing something you'd regret, subscribe, because next time we're going the other direction. The vehicles that go 300,000 miles without falling apart, which ones actually earn that reputation, and which ones are living off a reputation they lost 10 years ago. There's one badge on that list, a brand everybody swears by, that quietly stopped deserving it around 2019, and the reason why comes down to a single part that cost the factory about $40. That one's going to ruffle some feathers. Until then, run your payoff numbers, keep the oil clean, and remember, the goal was never the new car smell. The goal was the day the payments stop.